Hi, John Wesley Bready, page 135 of this Freedom Whence, England before and after Wesley. The shaping of a crusade. He is now discussing the training of the class leaders and the itinerant preachers by Wesley and the burden laid upon them if they were going to be part of his Methodist movement and leaders in it. Wesley enjoined upon all his preachers the necessity of spending at least 5 hours in 24 in reading the most useful books. He warned them that one could never be a deep preacher without extensive reading, any more than a thorough Christian. The 50 volumes of his Christian library were edited specifically for the general education of his preachers, helpers, and followers. Scores of his own treatises, as well as the Arminian magazine, were designed for the same end. Every preacher was made a distributor and seller of books, and all were expected to have mastered the publications they spread abroad. Wesley himself often was harshly censured for pushing his own books from pulpit and platform, but the criticism never perturbed him. He considered his ministry of writing as important as his ministry of preaching. He knew that books, to be of value, had to be read, and he knew, too, that people would read books for which they paid, however small the price. Hence, heedless of waspish criticism, he pushed and sold his books wherever he went, believing them to be an educational as well as an inspirational force. And his preachers he prodded to like efforts. "Exert yourselves in this," he insisted. "Be not ashamed, be not weary, leave no stone unturned." Every itinerant, in fact, was a book steward. In conference minutes urged preachers to be more active in dispersing books. Subscriptions were taken among many societies to establish local libraries for general use, and preachers were instructed to beg money of the rich to buy books for the poor. No man in the 18th century, says the Encyclopedia Britannica of Wesley, did so much to create a taste for good reading and to supply it with books at the lowest prices. The itinerant and local preachers, however, were themselves the chief recipients, as well as the chief mediators of that mighty educational influence, and greatly did they profit by it. Even the maxims drawn up by Wesley for his preachers and helpers suggest the same cultural influences he spread around them. "Endeavor to speak in public," he insisted, "just as you do in common conversation. To drawl is worse than to hurry. The good and honorable actions of men should be described with a full and lofty accent. Wicked and infamous actions with a strong and earnest voice, and such a tone as expresses horror and detestation. The mouth must never be turned awry, neither must you bite or lick your lips. Never clap your hands, nor thump the pulpit. Your hands are not to be in perpetual motion. This the ancients called the babbling of hands." That's the end of the instructions of Wesley. And Bready goes on, "Wesley's rules of a helper, issued by the Leeds Conference in 1753, are equally illuminating. Be diligent," he admonishes. "Never be unemployed for a moment. Believe evil of no one. Speak evil of no one. Do not affect the gentleman." That is, don't put on affectations of a gentleman. "You have no more to do with this character than with that of a dancing master. A preacher of the gospel is the servant of all. Be ashamed of nothing but sin, nor of fetching wood or drawing water, nor of cleaning your own shoes or your neighbor's. Be punctual. Do everything exactly at the time." Finally, he advises his preachers that for such a high calling, you will need all the sense you have, and to have your wits about you. Enthusiasm, therefore, was far removed from hysteria. It was tutored, disciplined, and therein lay its power. True, an occasional Judas found his way into the ranks of the preachers, but their proportion was closer to 1 in 100 than 1 in 12. Telford is completely justified in saying, quote, "No leader of a great religious movement was ever more happy in his helpers than Wesley," unquote. In a vital sense, these rustic apostles of the cross were men of the people, yet they were newborn to a life high above the people, and their ruling passion was to lift the fallen to the heights of that newborn life. They had an abiding vision of the kingdom of Christ, and their enthusiasm expressed itself in a holy crusade to establish righteousness in the hearts of men. Their consuming desire was to see the will of God done on earth as in heaven. Admittedly, their primary approach was the conversion of individual souls. But converted souls were called to be co-laborers together with God for the building of a society that hath foundations, a society based on the rock of Christian principles, not on the sands of political maneuver, economic cupidity, or class hatred. A society wherein truth, equity, brotherhood, purity, peace, temperance, and love should possess the souls of men and express themselves in all social institutions. To a phenomenal degree, these despised itinerant preachers were the heralds of a true Christian democracy. For more than history as yet realized did they release influences which have affected profoundly the sanest movements for social emancipation throughout the English-speaking world. The evangelical revival, despite Sir Leslie Stephen's verdict, assimilated almost vital and heroic in Puritanism, but it jettisoned the legalism and the exclusiveness of Puritanism. It was essentially a New Testament rather than an Old Testament movement. Its primary appeal, moreover, was not to the commercial and professional classes, nor yet to the aristocracy, but to the multitudes who earned their bread by the sweat of their brow. More than any other movement in modern history, it mediated a religion of the people, for the people, and by the people. But it made the people vitally conscious of God. Next chapter is the preaching of social righteousness. Put in a link to William Wilberforce, a great first-generation fruit of John Wesley's revival. William Wilberforce's book, Real Christianity, and the work he did to change the world in the generation or two after John Wesley's initial impact. And also the playlist to this entire series, What Christ Has Been Doing these 2,000 years.